Hello, and welcome to Penglis Online News. First, to Benghazi. It has been over 2.5 months since the terrorist mortar and rocket-propelled grenade attack on our embassy and the murders of Ambassador Stephen White, Sean Smith, Glenn Doherty, and Tyrone Woods. In those 2.5 months, there has not been a single reprisal by the Obama administration for this all-night act of war on our sovereign territory. No one has been killed in a defensive retaliation. No target has been bombed. No missiles have been launched. None of our aircraft have attacked or destroyed anything. In fact, no response of any kind has taken place. The administration response is to do nothing, which is in fact a surrender to terrorist forces, particularly Al-Qaeda, which has been implicated in the attack. The only attack of any kind has been here, on Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham by the left-wing Congressional Black Caucus and the Obama administration. Claiming that European American senators are unworthy to criticize or question African American UN Ambassador Susan Rice about her bogus claims that a spontaneous riot caused the deaths of our ambassador and his diplomatic mission. The administration is engaging in the very racism against the senators they proclaim to be against. The question for the White House is, why are they putting all their energy into verbally attacking senators, concerned with finding the inadequacies in policy and action that left our embassy staff vulnerable to attack, instead of attacking the terrorists who carried out the attack? Why is it irrelevant to the administration to defend our people, our sovereign territory, and our national honor? Why is it more important to cover up and ignore the events surrounding the murders in Benghazi than investigate them and get the story to the American people? Is it administration policy that only African Americans can question administration, African American spokespeople, and personnel? Can only European Americans question other European Americans? The implications to free and open inquiry, our system of checks and balances, a free press, and free speech are obvious. So why is the Obama administration and their accomplices in Congress grouping by race and sex those who can ask questions of them? When the White House answers all my questions, I'll report it to you, unless they declare me a European American who is unworthy to question them. The unemployment rate continues to hover at around 22%, despite all propaganda to the contrary. Under direction from the Obama administration, the Bureau of Labor Statistics only reports a portion of the unemployed, with the public figure of just under 8%. This lowball distortion is reinforced by the liberal media to make the Obama administration look better, especially during elections, but denies Americans the true picture. Due to changes in the way unemployment is calculated going back to the Clinton administration, huge segments of the unemployment community remain unaccounted for. Marginally attached workers, those who want work but have not looked in the last 4 weeks, are not counted. Part-time workers who want full-time work aren't counted. Long-term unemployed workers who want work but have stopped looking entirely are not counted. Including all these groups back in gives the true unemployment number of 22%, which approaches the worst unemployment rate during the Depression of 24.9%. Penglis Online News will continue to report the real unemployment rate and the unemployment report deficit as part of our regular features on the economy. The unemployment report deficit is the difference between the true and total unemployment rate and the distorted partial rate given by the administration. Currently, the unemployment report deficit is 14%, which is 22% real unemployment minus the current 8% underreport. The primary source for this report is John Williams' Shadow Government Statistics at shadowstats.com. Also featured is research from Street Talk Live, a website by Lance Roberts. The question for the Bureau of Labor Statistics is whether they will ever report the actual unemployment number. The Bureau of Labor Statistics currently has 6 different measurements of unemployment, called U1 through U6, all of which give different percentages of unemployment, and all of which have their own criteria for calculating the number. The best and most comprehensive government measure of unemployment is the U6 rate, which includes marginally attached and part-time workers, but it is still an incomplete calculation. Therefore, the apparent lowering of unemployment reported by the Obama administration can better be explained because they changed the way the numbers are calculated, not because of any improving job outlook. Removing large groups of unemployed from the accounting to make the numbers, and therefore the administration, look better, does nothing to address real unemployment. The truth we will be investigating here at Penglis Online News is, if the reported economy is getting so much better, why are the numbers of people on food stamps, welfare, and disability still so sharply rising upwards? Penglis Online News is brought to you by The Complete Guide to Flight Instruction, which is my sarcastic and blunt critique of our flight training system and how to fix it. Also, if you want to learn to fly, if you want all the secrets, all the inside information, all the things that'll really get you through the flight training system efficiently, quickly, and with all kinds of information you're not going to get from any other source, please consult The Complete Guide to Flight Instruction, available from Amazon.com. From the UK Mail Online website comes the report that global warming stopped 16 years ago. From the beginning of 1997 until August of 2012, there was no discernible rise in aggregate global temperatures. From 1980 until 1996, temperatures rose slightly, and in the 40 years or so before that, worldwide temperatures had been declining. Temperature data is compiled from over 3,000 sites on land and sea. The report of the temperature plateau was released by the Met Office, the National Weather Service of the United Kingdom. The report, which proclaims wonderful news for millions worldwide, falling for the myth of man-made climate change, was released without any fanfare, any press release. In fact, was released as quietly as possible, despite the staggering good news. The end of global warming means that all of the policies designed to combat climate change are no longer necessary, if they ever were, and can now be repealed and abolished. Failure to repeal such policies would be conclusive proof that all of the climate protection plans, alternate energy futures, investments in energy company subsidies, carbon taxes, environmental regulations, redefinition of carbon dioxide as a pollutant instead of as a plant-fertilizing gas, restrictions on U.S. energy source development and energy rationing, and all government expenditures for these plans had nothing to do with global warming or climate change, and were instead based on a leftist political philosophy, social engineering, an environmental extremist wish list, and massive moves towards a socialist economy and society. The origins of climate change hysteria go back to the failed 1990s movement towards so-called smart growth. When the campaign for that failed, the left included fear and doom into the debate by introducing the claim of global warming to scare people into the identical goals of smart growth. Those goals include socialist planned and controlled cities, towns, and neighborhoods. The freedom to drive is to be reduced and restricted as much as possible. This is accomplished in part by reduced availability of parking, making driving generally as expensive as possible through taxes, fees, and fuel prices, and by mandating restrictive high-occupancy vehicle lanes on highways. Energy use, particularly in the home, is conditional and rationed. Alternative energy sources are subsidized to artificially make them appear economical. Natural resources are strictly controlled. Communities would be regulated and controlled where jobs, shopping, and entertainment are self-contained, and therefore so are the people. Housing would be by government design. Travel is restricted. Such control of the individual and restrictions on freedom were initially opposed, but when combined with the need to save the planet, became more widely accepted. And the government plans for a new society went into planning and implementation. The EPA has a whole program combining the goals of smart growth and climate change. The history of these two combining movements is well documented with several papers and studies from both government and private groups. Our special feature of this broadcast concerns taxes. On this front, the Obama administration and the Democrat Party continue their absolute obsession with raising taxes and taxing Americans at different rates depending on their income. The administration is calling on Congress to expand the already Marxist graduated income tax, which taxes Americans at progressively higher percentages depending on their income, to ever higher percentages than exist now. The graduated income tax had its origin in the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. Our original Constitution had no income tax, which imparted to Americans the greatest freedom and liberty. Adopting the Marxist tax model does just the opposite. The Marxist income tax is discriminatory. The most prejudice and discrimination occurs at the highest levels of income for people who are already paying the majority of the income tax. This graduated tax is also a violation of the equal protection of the laws guaranteed by the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, as equality means tax equality as well. The justification for taking a greater percentage of tax from higher income earners claimed by the administration is one of fairness. Fairness is actually defined and practiced when everyone is being governed by the same rules, everyone shares an equal burden, and pays an equal share of the tax. Therefore, the only fair tax, the only equal tax, the only constitutional tax is a flat tax. The Marxist left, which created the graduated income tax, claimed that fairness requires that certain people pay more, with more meaning a progressively greater percentage of their income, and that is where the discrimination and prejudice occur. With a flat tax, however, the higher the income, more tax income is still being paid. The difference from a graduated tax and what makes a flat tax fair is that everyone pays the same percentage of income, which makes it an equal tax as well. Take a 10% flat tax with a $20,000 yearly income and a $200,000 income. The $20,000 income would pay $2,000, and the $200,000 income tax would be $20,000, which is $18,000 more than the $20,000 a year income. The tax exemption would change this, but if everyone had the same exemption of income, the tax would still be equal and fair. The other justification for discriminatory higher income tax rates from the administration and Democrat Party is that higher income productive Americans, quote, can afford it. Well, how do they know? Taxes, according to the Constitution, are to fund the necessary and proper expenditures of government. That is being changed by the administration into taxing what they think or determine everyone can afford. So the process of taxation has been reversed, from levying taxes after the need has been determined by due process for necessary expenditures, to taking by subjective and arbitrary criteria all the tax money from the people that the government wants, based on whatever the government thinks people can afford, and then spending it later as they please. Sequestration, we'll try that one more time. The automatic increase in tax rates and spending cuts goes into effect January 1st, 2013. This came about because neither the Republican Party, and certainly not the Democrat Party, can put their name on an actual vote to reduce spending. The entire economic problem in Washington is spending. Reducing it would cure the deficit, allow the payoff of the national debt, and allow for the necessary tax reductions to a constitutional flat tax. During the negotiations last summer to raise the debt ceiling, legislation was passed that mandated a $1 trillion in spending cuts over the next decade, and Congress has to come up with $1.2 trillion in tax collection increases. The spending reductions are not equal across the board, with defense taking one of the largest automatic budget slashes. The new automatic Obama tax increases would replace the current rates, which came in during the Bush administration. Congress and the President can change sequestration at any time with new legislation. Negotiating that new legislation before sequestration takes effect is what is going on now. But the discrimination of tax inequality remains regardless of whether sequestration occurs or the current tax rates are extended. Besides the reasons already reported, each of the income tax brackets or rates above the lowest rate also represents a violation of civil property rights because income is property. The Legal Information Center of Cornell University Law School defines as civil rights those which are enforceable rights or privilege which, if interfered with by another, gives rise to an action for injury. The customary rights of free speech, free press, and the ability to own and carry firearms without infringement and free assembly are well known. What hasn't been considered so widely is that property rights are civil rights, and income is property. Therefore, income is subject to the equal protection of the laws. This gives rise to the question of how soon legal action will be brought against the graduated Marxist income tax and all other taxes that violate civil property rights and constitutional protections. In the meantime, if nothing is done before sequestration, January 1st, the new graduated rates will be 15% up to $35,000 a year in income, 28% for incomes up to $85,000, 31% up to $178,000, 36% for up to $388,000, and above that, the income is taxed at 39.6%. The 10% bracket, which would be a good place for a constitutional flat tax, is abolished. Further research for the story came from the Christian Science Monitor website DC Decoder, the Godfrey Kahn Attorney at Law website, and the Dow Jones website Smart Money. What is conspicuously absent from the current tax and spending reduction debate are any new solutions or ideas. The Obama administration and the Democrats are committed to tax increases, and the Republicans are committed to caving in to the Obama administration and the Democrats. One way to end not only the debt crisis, the spending crisis, and the Marxist tax system is to actually pass a constitutional budget. Such a budget would be based solely on the delegated powers of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. A while back, I wrote the Heritage Foundation about this and heard back from Brian Riedel, their budget expert, that a constitutional budget would only cost about $1 trillion a year. Most of that would go for defense, then some for the federal highway system, and a small amount for Congress, the post office, the courts, and other constitutionally mandated offices. The usgovernmentrevenue.com website reports total direct revenue for 2013 will be $5.5 trillion, which, if the government passed a strictly constitutional budget, would result in a $4.5 trillion surplus. The federal deficit would be eliminated. $4.5 trillion a year would then be available for debt reduction, and the national debt could be paid off in 4 years. Our national credit rating would be exemplary, and we wouldn't need to borrow any money to run the constitutionally compliant government. This could all be accomplished in one presidential term, but not this presidential term. Checking back at the presidential schedule for Thursday, November 29th, the president had a daily briefing at 10:25 in the morning, which lasted for 10 minutes. Then he met with senior advisors at 10:45. At 12:15, the president met with Nobel Prize winners for 15 minutes, and then has lunch with Governor Mitt Romney at 12:30, just over 2 hours after he started his day. Nothing else was scheduled for the day. On Friday, November 30th, the president made a post-election campaign stop in Philadelphia. The price of gold closed November 29th at $1,726 an ounce. Silver was $34 an ounce. The dollar, because of excessive printing of the paper money, continued to decline in value. The Dow Jones average closed November 29th at 13,021 points, which is 1,143 points below the Bush administration high of 14,164. This is the premier broadcast of Penglis Online News, with many more to follow. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned as we look at the world through conservative eyes. Good day.